After 7 long years, it seems the drought has finally relaxed its hold on our state. The mountain snows are starting to melt, and streams long filled with dust are starting to flow. The earth rejoices in an explosion of color. Lush greens, brilliant yellows, splashes of vivid red. Colors that seem so true and so rich, they can only come from nature's palette. But most incredible of all is an endless field of lavender blue, an extraordinary shade that changes hues as it nods and waves in the wind. Water has restored the land, and the marsh celebrates in an extravagant riot of color. Historically, this stretch of Idaho has been known as the Camas Prairie, named for the prolific lavender blue camas blooms that carpet the valley in the springtime. Towering to the north are the snowy peaks of the Soldier and Smoky Mountains. To the south lie the rolling Bennett Hills. In 1987, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game established a wildlife management area here in cooperation with Ducks Unlimited and the Nature Conservancy. Our state's hunters contributed funding through the purchase of the Idaho waterfowl stamp. In the midst of the prairie, 3,000 acres was set aside for wildlife and named Centennial Marsh in honor of Idaho's first 100 years.
And we have a pretty good population of non-game species like the sandhills, the avocets, the curlews, the willets, the yellowlegs, and the phalaropes. And there's a lot of birds that use this marsh and depend on this marsh.
Habitat biologist Terry Gregory is the caretaker of Centennial Marsh. The hope was that the wetland would provide vital nesting habitat for waterfowl, especially ducks, a species hard hit by habitat loss and drought. But in past years, the demand on the water table for irrigation, combined with the effects of drought, have left the marsh high and dry by early summer, the most critical time to have water if newly hatched ducklings are going to survive. To resolve the problem, Terry has constructed a series of ponds connected to a well by a pipeline and ditch system. And surrounding the ponds, he's planted high, sturdy grasses, perfect nesting cover for waterfowl.
I feel like, yes, we have more birds here than we've had in the past, so I think it is working. I think the birds will continue to come, and once we get that tradition established again, that the birds have a place to come to, the population will increase, so that's our goal.
Nature has joined the struggle, bestowing the gift of a wet, snowy winter to feed the depleted water table. And then, as if that were not enough, in a burst of fanfare, she blankets the prairie in an achingly beautiful blue, a profusion of color that hasn't been seen in such abundance for 30 years. The root of this bright flower is a large, round bulb that has a high starch content. Before the white man settled the prairie, Native Americans, the Shoshone, Bannock, and Blackfoot tribes, would migrate to this area by the thousands each spring to gather the camas root for food.
And they really depended on this. It was one of their staples to get them through the winter. They would roast it and then grind it, dry it, grind it into a flour, and then make a cake out of it, a small cake.
Now the prairie provides for the wildlife, furnishing food and shelter to an amazing variety of birds.
I guess I'd like to think that I'm just making things better here than they were. I enjoy the birds. I enjoy the people being able to see the birds.
A quiet sense of peace envelops the marsh. Time slows and then is forgotten as visitors and residents alike conform to the ancient rhythm of nature. A phalarope, sometimes pronounced phalarope, skims along, a small sandpiper-like bird that seems constantly in motion, rapidly dabbing its bill as it feeds. Stalking gracefully through the higher grasses is a willet, a rather nondescript gray-brown bird that's a cousin to the brighter phalarope. The low, steady hum of the marsh is interrupted by a sandhill crane singing out a warning with her peculiar call. We've stumbled across her secret. 2 large eggs perched on a flat platform of a nest made of dried grasses. She, in turn, invades the territory of a blackbird, who becomes agitated and begins to harass the larger bird in an almost comical show of aggression that seems to have little effect on the plodding pace of the sandhill. A pair of striking black, white, and tan patterned birds search the shallows, feeding on aquatic insects, seeds, and small crustaceans. The American avocet is easily recognized by its slender, upturned bill and distinctive plumage. Author and conservationist Aldo Leopold writes eloquently in his book, A Sand County Almanac, of his hope that a wildlife legacy be preserved to pass on to his 3 sons. He writes, "I hope to leave them good health, an education, and possibly even a competence. But what are they going to do with these things if there be no more deer in the hills, and no more quail in the coverts, no more snipe whistling in the meadow, no more piping of widgeons and chattering of teal as darkness covers the marshes, no more whistling of swift wings when the morning star pales in the east, and when the dawn wind stirs through the ancient cottonwoods and the gray light steals down from the hills over the old river sliding softly past its wide brown sandbars, what if there be no more goose music?" Aldo Leopold's legacy remains alive in the wonder of Centennial Marsh, a magical place where the music can still be heard.